Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Carrow Road. Another championship game of football awaits us here. Norwich City hosting Sheffield Wednesday this evening, hoping to inject a little bit of life left into their season, maybe trying to prove that it is not quite race run yet. Obviously, 1-1 draw against Oxford. There are some interesting fixtures elsewhere tonight. West Brom away at Burnley. I think Bristol City are at Bramall Lane as well. So there is a chance, providing, and I recognise this is a big if in the circumstances of this Norwich City season, but if they can win, then there is a potential that we head to Ashton Gate with a 3-point gap between Norwich City and the top six on Friday evening, which at least would make it a little bit exciting. So let's see how it all unfolds. Obviously, a few events have got to happen for those circumstances to be the case. Come 10 o'clock this evening, we're going to bring you the team news, which has now dropped. 3 Norwich City changes. The headline, Paddy Davitt, Josh Sargent does not start for Norwich City this evening. It's Reyes in goal. Fisher, Duffy, Cordoba and Doyle is the back four. McLean, Wright and Slimani is the midfield three. Marcondes, Sainz and Sienats the front three for Norwich City. Josh Sargent is amongst the substitutes. So just to read that again for you. No Josh Sargent in the Norwich City starting 11. Reyes in goal. Fisher, Duffy, Cordoba and Doyle the back four. McLean, Wright and Slimani the midfield three. Marcondes and Sainz on either flank with Sienats down the middle. The subs bench, Dan Barden, Jack Stacey, Ruari McConville, Jakob Sorensen, Amankwa Forson returns to the squad. Oscar Schwartau, Onel Hernandez, Elliot Miles and Josh Sargent. Well, let's go straight there then, Paddy. No Josh Sargent in the starting lineup. That is an eyebrow raiser.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think, having been there with him yesterday, was the section where he talked about changes. He said he had not freshen up, but a second of a 3-game week, and they go to Bristol, obviously, a quick turnaround there. I think there was a line along the lines of, having to, again, just be wary of certain individuals in terms of the load, and whether that applies. I mean, the one thing is, he's obviously fit, because you don't put him on the bench if he's carrying anything, there's a niggle. What's the point of having him on the bench? He's been named in the US squad, I see earlier today, for the upcoming Gold Cup, I think it is, games. So, fitness-wise, physically, that isn't an issue. Otherwise, he's not on the bench. So, therefore, it can only be a load management issue. Now, the question is, given how absolutely important, crucial he is to them, I think it's 8 goals in the last 10, 17 goal contributions in 22, either side of that, 14 games off for groin surgery. At this stage of the season, you mapped out there they need to win tonight to really realistically have any prospect of keeping this thing going in terms of top 6. Why would you have them on the bench? Makes no sense, really, to me. So we'll await Johannes' thought processes on that, but piecing it together, it's not a fitness issue in terms of injury-wise, because you don't put him on the bench. So it can only be a load issue. And we've seen it with Nunes, we've seen it with McLean to a degree, not starting him the other day. One or two others. Sargent, the way his load was managed when he initially came back from the surgery.
Yep.
Is this more of the same? Possibly. And if so, it's a very big call, and it's hard to fathom why you wouldn't flip that and start him, and if you need to get him off and get Cernach on through the middle or switch him down the middle, do it that way. Because I think the reality is they're going to be a poorer operation in the final third. And is the game already getting away from him by the time you introduce him? So, but these are the challenges. This is what he gets paid his money for, him and the coaching staff, and they've made that call, and they certainly know what's going to come if it goes against them tonight. Yeah, and I guess the defence is, you look at the workload of other players, and we've spoken a lot about this in regards to injuries and how many load-related injuries they've had. I spoke to Josh Sargent. I can't remember after what game it was, but I asked him about coming off early, and he said of October, that month where he played a lot of minutes, and it was just before he got his groin injury, that he probably played a little bit too much. And you do risk, I guess, and this is the risk and reward element to it. You do risk him picking something else up. There was a little knock on Saturday, wasn't there, where he was walking around a little bit, excuse the pun, gingerly for a few minutes. So yeah, you can only imagine that it's a protection of him, really. But one thing is for sure, whether it's the right decision, whether it's the wrong decision, if you're Danny Röhl, if you're Sheffield Wednesday, you don't half feel buoyed by seeing Josh Sargent on the bench tonight. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. You don't want to over-interpret these things, but is it an element of that you've now thrown them off balance a little bit, and that if Norwich get a positive start, then because I'm sure a lot of his work preparing for this game clearly had by common consent, the best number 9 in the league, and how you nullify him. But I would still find that quite a strange thought process from a Norwich perspective to do something with a view to throwing some shade at the Sheffield sort of plans. I mean, to me, it clearly has just to simply be they don't think in a 3-game week he can go start. That's what it boils down to, clearly.
Do we think that's definitely anti-Sinats through the middle? Is there a world in which we see Emi Marcondes as that false 9 and Sinats remain on the right?
In which case you're talking, yes, so Slimani right and McLean, yeah. I mean, that is potentially the case.
Have to see how that front 3 lines up exactly, but
yeah,
that is an option.
We saw it at Luton, I recall. More recently, there was a Bristol game here, I think, when he did that as well. And to be honest, he's not a sergeant number 9, but I thought he was quite intelligent in his movement and how he linked the play, dropped into midfield. Yeah, it's a plausible way to go. Yeah, because Cernach down the middle over the entirety of his experiment there hasn't quite worked. I think it's safe to say, being charitable. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if he goes Marcondes. But as I say, if this doesn't go right tonight, and you've started a game without Sargent, and then you bring him on, and the result falls the wrong side, I think he knows it's probably coming. So it's a brave call.
What do we make of that midfield? I'm pleased to see Jacob Wright retain his place. I think what we saw from him the other night, and I think he has, certainly since that first game here against Preston, and probably the start of the whole game as well. And to be fair to him, we know the mitigation and the circumstances around that introduction against Preston, where it was really in from the deep end. Thought he was good actually at the start of the second half on Friday night, and obviously with Kenny coming back in as well. It feels like there's a bit more, and we spoke about this on the podcast. I think if you play Sorensen and Wright, there's a lot of similarities between those two players in terms of profile, and Slimani as well. I think there's quite a nice blend to that midfield 3 tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I thought prior to the Sargent twist, he'd bring McLean and he'd bring McCondas in and retain Wright out of the 3 who started in the centre mid on Saturday. And he followed that up with what he said Oxford Friday, and yesterday when I asked him as well, and wrapped around that the contractual situation moving into the summer. There's no doubt Johannes Torrum, if he's got anything to do with it, wants Jacob Wright as a permanent signing, because he clearly liked what he saw in terms of profiling and recruitment, but then subsequently having worked with him, got him in the building. 3rd start only in the league of his career against Oxford, and there was a lot to like in that performance. What he is a very technically gifted footballer, but in the very short period of time, he's obviously got up to speed in terms of the intensity and the physicality and doing things at speed in terms of his passing and his movement. And he's only going to go one way from here, you think. So for me, in very short order, he is a name that has to be in that midfield 3 moving forward between now and the end of the season.
Shane Duffy back as well.
Yeah, not surprised by that. Yeah, I just think whatever side of the fence you are about the incident on Friday, prior to that, he was the only one, I think I'm right in saying, who started 35 of 35 league games.
Yep.
That's how important he is. That's how important he is, particularly important in a very young and a constantly evolving back line. And obviously, again, tonight, worth reiterating, Vicente Reyes, only his 2nd league appearance for Norwich. So I think there was absolutely no doubt that, Duffy has to come back in tonight. And you would hope, the type of character that he probably is, that he might feel that he wants to just not prove a point, but just show that what he's all about, and deliver his response on the pitch, because I'm sure he was frustrated. I know he was frustrated. So that's gone. That door's closed, as Giannis said it would be, as it was with Cordoba and Watford. So, yeah, to me, that was an absolute no-brainer. I mean, that is the back 4 that would have started against Oxford, but for his lateness pre-match Friday.
Yes, to be fair, when you look at the lineup on some of the apps and whatnot, it has got Emi Marcondes down the middle and Antti Sinats on the right. So again, we will see exactly how that unfolds when it comes to it. Let's bring you the Sheffield Wednesday team if we can. We can indeed. This is how They line up Beadle in goal, Valentin, Ihekwa, Lowe and Johnson as the back four. Charles and the evergreen Barry Bannon in midfield. Kasama and Ingleson on either side. Josh Windass behind Callum Patterson. So a back four with Max Lowe at centre-back, which isn't ideal. I think he's, from what I've read and heard, he's maybe struggled a little bit in that position in the last couple of games, noticeably more against Sunderland than Plymouth perhaps at the weekend. Their subs bench: Pearce, Charles, Liam Palmer, Nathan Shalaba, Dominic Iorfa, Ike Ugbo, Ibrahim Sissoko, Olaf Kabaki, who was linked with Norwich, wasn't he, last summer, Michael Smith and Rio Hasuse as well. So that is how Sheffield Wednesday line up this evening, rather. And I mean, Wednesday an interesting side, Paddy. I mean, Johannes spoke about them a little bit and how they change between the 5 and the 4. Given Gary Rowett's comments on Friday about Norwich City struggles against a 5, let's hope they can have a bit more joy against the 4 tonight.
And from everything of Danny Rowell and how highly rated he is, none of that will have escaped his attention. So I'll be quite surprised if they don't line up as a 5, to be honest. Maybe with a little bit more ambition than Oxford showed. So some of the same challenges may face this Norwich collective tonight. I'm pretty sure they won't have 77% of the ball tonight. And if Sheffield do show a little bit of ambition going the other way, like Johannes said in that answer yesterday, in response to the Rowett comments, Watford came with a 5, but they tried to push their wing backs on, and Norwich were very good that day. And it was the game picture that Johannes likes to talk about in their favour. If they get that tonight, then a 5 won't make huge difference to what Norwich are trying to do. If it's an Oxford challenge, then, as he said, you have to be much quicker, much sharper in terms of your actions, and certainly in the midfield areas as well. And we talked about that on the podcast. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if they set up in a 5, but maybe with a little bit more ambition than Oxford. So some of the same aspects may be in play, but I don't think there'll be a like-for-like challenge from Friday gone.
Callum Doyle back at left back. He's probably the back 4 that it would have been on Friday night. Going to be interesting to see how they readjust to that. But with Cordoba in there as well, it doesn't half give them some progression on that side with the ball, which, if it is the type of game that maybe we anticipate, could be quite helpful tonight. Yeah,
the balance as well, isn't it? I mean, to be fair, it was Doyle who triggered the goal for Sargent Friday night. That ball inside the fullback for the overlapping Kellen Fisher, but you can feel it was a bit lopsided. He wanted everything on his left, which sort of brings the play back in field. So that's a far more natural fit to have 2 left footers out there, and obviously the 2 right footers in Fisher and Duffy. But I think McLean as well, within that ball progression aspect of it, he's crucial because his longer range of passing, I think, is good in this squad, as good as anything really. Maybe Nunes aside. And with Wright in there as well, you could see that would potentially release McLean to be a bit further forward as well, which he can do. It's not natural to him, but he has those instincts. So, and Slimani, we know, is probably a more naturally attacking-minded centre-mid option. So it feels like they've got more dynamism and drive in those areas than they had here on Friday night. As you rightly said, with a Wright and Sorensen midfield, it's a little bit pedestrian, one pace, that, isn't it? So that certainly shouldn't be an issue tonight with those selections.
And obviously we've got to speak about Vicente Reyes, second start for him in a few days, really. And no drama, really, of Friday night. He made 1 save in the first minute and then obviously conceded the goal in the 18th. I don't think he did a lot after that. I think Oxford had 1 shot after that and left Carrow with a point. His distribution was fine, I felt, without being outstanding. You get the sense tonight might be a little bit tougher for him. He might be a little bit busier tonight.
Yeah, well, my concern is, Giannis underscored it, but even you go back to just the Hillsborough away game, which I know they were depleted. I know it was long that night, but they got beaten up really in the box. Their first goal was a long error, but it was that deep free kick, and Norwich weren't able to deal with it. And they just pound away. They do have a bit more to them with the likes of Bannon. Technically very good player. Callum Patterson, I think, is having a very good season by all accounts. But they are like Preston, very physical, very in your face, very streetwise. And again, as Gary Rowett testified, a young keeper, let's test him. They tried to do that with those longer throws. Yeah, it didn't really get under his skin too much. The nature of the game, it was hard for them to try and test any vulnerability in a young keeper making his way. But I think Sheffield will definitely up the ante in that respect. But with Duffy in there tonight, hopefully he can add a bit more protection around him. But yeah, we might find out a little bit more about Reyes' readiness tonight, I think.
Yeah, I might be wrong on this, but Callum Patterson, I think, has a long throw, possibly. I remember him winding up a few at Cardiff, so he could get a similar challenge tonight in that regard. Mankell Forson, nice to see him back in the matchday squad, Paddy, since those heroics against Coventry in January, where he was the story, he was the match winner. He had those epic celebrations in front of the River End. Obviously, then played against Brighton, got injured, and a certain Midlands team in Sky Blue, I think, who have not been doing too bad since then. So they've been okay. But he obviously hasn't played a minute of Championship football after that, which is such a shame because you think about the sliding doors moment that it could have been. I mean, look, it might still be, but all that momentum that he could have had was sort of lost within minutes against Brighton with that knee issue. But good to see him back tonight, even if, judging by Johannes' comments, we probably won't expect to see much of him this evening.
I mean, it was along the lines of he's trained, he's back available, but it'll probably be too soon. But not soon enough, it would seem, to be on the bench and maybe required late on. But yeah, in the bigger picture, I mean, he needed that. He needed that moment, didn't he? Those moments against Coventry, it just lit the touch paper, and it was a shame then off the back of it, as you say, that injuries put him out to a degree. But hopefully he can retain that sense of like, I've arrived now in a Norwich shirt that he had from that game and build on that now between now and the end of the season. I think with him now, as with a lot of these younger players, Dubai's comment there, for me is spot on. I wouldn't get too het up about making the playoffs or not making them now. I think the bigger picture is these players, certainly the younger ones, taking more leaps forward in this block of 10 remaining games, and he fits into that category because you want him to emerge and become more of an influence than he has been in his debut season next season.
Yes, indeed. And, I know you mentioned about the playoffs, but again, just to reiterate, if Norwich City can win this evening, West Brom away at Burnley, Bristol City away at Sheffield United, look, nothing in this league is a guarantee, and there can be a shock, and we know that, so it's not to automatically write off either of their prospects, but certainly they would not be the favourites in either of those games, I think it's fair to say. So who knows, maybe Norwich City can make up some ground, at least make that trip to Ashton Gate a little bit interesting on Friday night. How do you see this going, Paddy, after Friday night? And I know it's about, obviously, the long-term picture. I'm with you. I think the playoffs is probably gone now. I mean, I did some calculations for the six things on Monday, and to get to 70 points, they obviously need 21 in 10 games. That's more than 2 points per game at this stage. That's just to get to 70 points. So you're either hoping for an incredible run or for a very low points tally, which isn't beyond the realms, judging by where those teams are at this moment in time. How do you see this going? It does feel, irrespective of sort of playoff talk, does feel like everyone could do with a win tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at the last six, it's one win in six. Equally, it's one defeat. But mixed in there is the derby and the Blackburn stoppage time frustration. So, yeah, from that point of view, it certainly wouldn't go amiss just to get the 3 points on the board tonight and have that winning feeling back here at Carrow Road. It's been a little bit patchy of late, hasn't it? Let's be honest. But I do feel we might be heading for another draw. I just think they are, for me, in the Preston bracket. You get nothing at all easy from this team. They've lots of experience in that team. Bannon, the standout. They will probe for any vulnerability. We've seen plenty of that, let's be honest, in the Norwich collective throughout this season. Those residual issues, when they're getting those in front, it feels like they collectively sit back and almost invite what's going to unfold, and they need to push through that, and it's a mentality thing for me, and more of those experiences hopefully will come out the right side. But it all feels that it's still, you're hoping that they will do the business tonight rather than you can say it with any real degree of certainty. And obviously the clincher for me is that you're starting with Sargent on the bench. He is by some distance your main goal threat, so who's going to step up and replace that if I think time will tell if he's only really available to have a little cameo tonight. So all things considered, I think a draw again for me. You, Connor?
Yeah, I could see a draw, but I'll be a little bit different, and I'll say a very nervy, edgy Norwich win. 2-1 I'm going to go for, but I agree with everything you said there. I could see this being a very close one. Wouldn't surprise me at all if the two teams cancelled each other out. But yeah, it really, if Friday night wasn't a must-win, this one definitely does feel that way. If you want to look at the top six, which obviously if you're thinking more long-term than that, then it would be good to see another decent Norwich City performance at home. But it would be nice, I think, to end the evening with a Carrow Road win, which, as you rightly say, Paddy, they've not had for a little while, or nearly often enough. That probably does us from here. Obviously, Blinken.com, the place to go. Paddy will be speaking to Giannis off Torrup. I'm sure certainly towards the start of the questions will be about Josh Sargent and that decision to leave him on the bench this evening. Let's hope that it pays off from a Norwich City perspective. we will see you all on the other side. Enjoy the game if you're here tonight or watching from afar. I've got the live blog as well. You can come and join me over there for obviously follow updates and join the debate as well. So I hope to see as many of you over there as possible. See you soon.